What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are going to check out the 6505 MH from Peavey. Let's do it! Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there. Today, we're taking a look at the Peavey 6505 MH. This has been a much requested amp on my channel due to the fact that I'm a huge 5150/6505 fan. A lot of people have asked me my thoughts on this amp, so now you're gonna get to hear them. Thanks to my man Mike, who is my #1 Patreon supporter. He actually traded me this amp for a KSR series that I was selling. Really appreciative to you, Mike, as I definitely wanted to get one of these on my channel and you made it happen. Thank you very much. So, this was actually the first lunchbox size amp that I ever owned. I had one of these probably 4 years ago, not long after they were released. I got it. I was super impressed with it. I actually really liked it. There are a couple things that I didn't like about it, and we'll get to those in a minute, but overall, it does a really good job of getting that 6505 tone without having to break the walls down, shatter the windows. You know, 5150, 6505, there's that little bit of threshold on the volume or the post gain knob where it goes from fizzy mess to instantly too loud, and there's a little spot in there where sometimes you can get it if you're lucky that's like a practice volume level. But overall, that amp is just really loud when you're trying to play it at home. So unless you have like a EQ or a volume pedal you can stick in the loop, they can tend to be somewhat unplayable if you're just trying to practice in your bedroom. This amp, while it does get very loud, you can actually get bedroom volume tones much easier with it. But again, it's a 20-watt tube amp. Realistic output is probably closer to 11 or 12 watts with the EL84 power tubes in it, but it's still gonna be loud. Now you can knock it down. There's a 20-watt, 5-watt, and 1-watt setting, I believe, on the back of this amp. I've always thought that it just sounded best in the 20-watt setting. As soon as you start knocking the power settings down, it kind of tends to lose like the top end sparkle. I don't know, it just makes the amp not as pleasant to my ears, so I never really play it on those lower settings. I just try to find a sweet spot on the volume knob on the 20-watt setting. So we are going through my Mesa oversized rectifier cab with the vintage 30s. We currently have vintage 30s mic'd up, but over here, I finally got around to installing the Eminence DV77 speakers. Those are the Eminence Omega collaborations for Mick Thompson. They are installed, they are broken in, they are ready to rip. I'm gonna do a video on those very soon. But anyways, we're micing up the V30. I'll switch the mic over to the DV77 towards the end of the video just so you guys can hear how the amp sounds through two different speakers. Overall, I really like this amp, but my main complaint with it was that I just don't like EL84 amps. So it's not necessarily a fault of the amp itself, but I don't like the tone and the feel that EL84s tend to impart on amps. There are very few EL84 amps I've really ever enjoyed. The one that I really like the most is the original EVH LBX, and then surprisingly the Mesa Rectifier Mini sounds absolutely incredible to my ears, and that's also an EL84 amp. But the reason that I ultimately sold this amp is it's hard to balance the EQ where it's not too bright and too stringy. Like I said, EL84s tend to impart this like stringy quality. It kind of thins things out, but it can still be boomy if you have the bass frequencies dialed up. And they tend to get farty at louder volumes, and they just can't hang in a band situation, at least not like a metal band situation where your drummer hits hard and everything. So I really had no use for it because I have other amps that sound great at bedroom volumes, and if an amp doesn't work in a band situation, it typically doesn't stick around for me. So I'm revisiting this for the first time. My other complaint We were on the lead channel with a boost out front in order to get this thing nice and tight. The gain is literally almost off. It's just too much gain on that lead channel. It's nothing like the regular 6505 or 6505 plus where you have to have the gain between like 3 and 5 in order to get it to the proper level of saturation. Here, it's like as soon as you turn the gain on with a boost, it's oversaturated. So keep that in mind. What I did on my old one is I got a couple of Tungsol 5751 preamp tubes, which really kind of tamed the gain on it a little bit without sucking the punch and the tone from the amp. This does not have that. It's got all the stock tubes in it, so we're playing this amp as if we just pulled it out of the box. All right, so I'm going to turn the boost off. We're gonna go back over to the rhythm channel because I tend to not spend a lot of time on the green channel on 6505s, but we're gonna do it anyways and see how that sounds. All right, so we're gonna put everything back to noon on this rhythm channel, including the power amp settings. We are going to disengage the bright and the crunch switches and hear how that sounds. Real quick, if this is your first time here at my channel, what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, overdrive pedals, guitar cabs, guitar pickups, guitar stuff, and I record them with a simple SM57 setup directly into my interface, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio. That way you guys get the most real world feel for how this stuff will sound. If that's something that you guys like high gain, E standard thrash riffs, power chords, and belligerent amateur musicians, please feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Okay, we are on the rhythm channel. The crunch switch is disengaged and everything is at noon. All right, so we have kind of like a dirty, not great sounding clean. Let's bump that gain up to noon. Now we have an even dirtier sounding clean. It's almost like a pushed gain type of sound. Let's turn it up a little bit more. All right, so essentially the clean channel on these amps has never been good. The Invective is really one of the first amps that set out to fix the clean channel on these things. This amp, again, cleans are not really all that clean. You'd probably have to keep the rhythm volume really low and then turn the master volume up. But then again, EL84s break up really quick, so still probably not going to get the greatest cleans out of this amp. I'm going to engage the bright switch and see what kind of difference that makes on the tone. All right, so that sounds okay. Like if you're going for like a classic rock type thing, let's get some presence, a little bit of highs and a little bit of mids on here to liven it up. So not bad if you're going for like a classic rock type thing. It's not really what these amps are made for, but it can do it okay. Again, not my favorite thing, and I've also noticed that the mids on this amp are extremely touchy. The mids are what seem to really make this amp sound thin, and I like my mids, so it's kind of a bummer because when I dial them up to where I would like to have them, the amp just seems really almost too vocal. It's like too much mids, they're out in front of everything, and it makes the amp sound a little bit thin. Dial them back a little bit, and you got a nice sound there, so I'm gonna bump the presence a little bit more. Again, let's bump them up and see what a difference that makes. It just makes them sit a little bit too out front for me. I think that's the EL84 power tubes talking. We've got the volume at about 7 out of 10, so we're pretty high on the volume as far as this amp is concerned. So let's bump everything back to noon again. Let's engage the crunch and put the gain back down to 9 o'clock. All right, so basically back to kind of like a dirty, clean thing. Gain is now at noon on the crunch channel. All right, so we're getting a little bit more saturated there. Again, we need some highs, we need some presence. It sounds kind of lifeless as it is. The bright switch is still engaged. All right, so let's bump it up to, right between 6 and 7. There's a big difference in noise, so I'm guessing we're gonna get a lot of gain coming on right here. Okay, so we definitely have some more saturation. The amp is getting a little bit muddy though. Let's try to bump those mids again. See if we can get a little bit more clarity out of it. All right, so it's not quite as bad now that we're on the crunch channel, but I can still hear it a little bit. I'm gonna leave them where they are. I'm gonna bump the lows and give us a little bit more presence, and I'm gonna bump the resonance up. Okay, so we're sounding kind of muddy, but we definitely got some high gain stuff going on. Let's crank the gain up to like 4 o'clock and see how much saturation we get out of that. Still on the crunch channel. All right, so lots of saturation. I do have the Deadweald Audio Golem noise gate on, so take that off and that's what you got as far as noise in front of the amp. Pretty noisy. Kick that Golem on. We're nice and quiet again. All right, so we're gonna pull that gain back to about 6 o'clock. Let's kick in the Duality, my favorite boost. Better. Again, the mids are still kind of too much, so let's pull the mids back on the amp. All right, so not bad. Let's kick on the all pedal Slammer Eye real quick and see how that sounds in front of this amp. All right, so that gives it a little bit like more throaty, guttural type thing. Doesn't cut the lows quite as much. Let's pull the lows back, up the highs. That sounds really nice. That sounds good. Let's kick that off. I think we're done with this channel, but you guys can see real quick. Let me scoop the mids out and kick the Duality back on and see how it sounds with the mids dialed down a little bit. So the lows on this amp definitely come on really quick and it sounds really full in the low end. I'm guessing Peavey was definitely trying to compensate for it being a smaller amp with a smaller power section, and they probably just built more low into the EQ and into the resonance. It sounds like most of it is coming from the resonance, to be honest, because they're very low frequencies that I'm feeling a lot of, so tends to kind of muddy things up a little bit on the lows, but it's not terrible. Okay, now back to noon, everything back to noon. Let's go over to that lead channel, because that is where I like to be on this amp. Boost is off. I've got the gain literally off. Let's see how it sounds. We got nothing coming through. And just like that, we're super saturated. We're under 1 on number 1, not 1 o'clock. We're under 1 on the gain on this amp right now. Okay, so it's really thin. Let's bump the gain up a little bit. So now we're actually at 1. All right, so basically this amp does not need a boost on the lead channel. It is extremely tight. I say need, I don't need a boost on the lead channel of this amp. It is tight enough for me, and you guys know how tight I like my low end to be. That is not lacking in tightness by any means. Seems a little bit quiet though. All right, so now we've got some full volume on it. Let's bump the low or the gain a little bit more. We're now at 2 on the gain. No boosts are engaged. Again, there just seems to be a little something missing. I don't know what it is. We're going to turn the highs and the mids up just a tad. And just like that, I don't like how it sounds. It sounds stringy again, so that's a bummer. Let's turn the presence up. Okay, pretty thin here. Let's turn the resonance and the low end up a little bit. Okay, so now it's nice and big and fat sounding. Let's pull those mids back. Yeah, it still stays really, really tight without a boost, but you know me, I'm gonna kick in a boost anyways because that's what I like to do. So let's do that. I'm gonna pull the gain back down, and the slammer eyes seem to remain a little bit fatter once we kick that in versus the Deadweald, which cuts a little bit more lows. So let's kick the slammer eye in and see how that sounds in front. Woo! Okay, so that has a really mean voicing to it. I'm gonna turn the mids down on the slammer eye a little bit. Oh man, that suits this amp nicely. This boost sits well with this amp. Let's turn the lows up just a bit. Wow. Okay, so that's fun. Let's turn up the mids just a tad and the gain just a tad. Okay, real quick, one riff in drop C. So it holds up relatively well under the drop C tuning. Still stays nice and punchy on the low end. Actually seems a little bit clearer with this particular pickup maybe. I had a Duncan full shred in the Schecter. This has the Gibson 498T in it. So it sounds really good like that. Again, I'd much prefer the bigger amps, but this does not sound bad by any means, and it comes pretty close to the 6505 or 5150 core tone. Real quick, I'm gonna switch the mic over to the DV77, let you guys hear how that sounds for just a second, and then we're done here for the day. Okay guys, so I now have the SM57 on the DV77 mic the same way as I had the V30. Let's hear that. Alright guys, this has been the Peavey 6505MH. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it helpful. If you liked the video, please hit the like button on the way out. Consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss the next one, because I've got more awesome big and small heads like this, more cab and speaker comparisons, everything else like that on the way. I'm uploading 4 to 5 videos a week, so please hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you guys don't miss the next one. I'd love to have you here. Thank you so much for watching. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time. Bye!